We're sitting at December 15th, and I'm making this one because, when I started doing these things, I didn't want to just do it out of advising and sharing past experiences, because although that helps, I think, and oftentimes I have found myself getting way more out of taking the journey and going through an experience with someone, or at least watching them as they it's different. It's just a totally different thing, where instead of listening to what somebody has done in a past tense, it's so much more effective to watch someone do something presently. Also, as much as my own personality causes me to seem confident a lot of the time, it would be very inaccurate. I don't want to say it would be arrogant, but it would be very inaccurate. It would be bullshit to say that, I'm completely put together 100% of the time. It would be bullshit, because nobody is. You can mask it really well. You can float it out, so to speak. You can make it seem like everything's smooth, at least on the top shell of it. On the surface, you can at least fake it a little bit. But nobody's ever 100% stable. If anything, we're always just a little bit unstable, as even when things are at their best, you're always a breath away from things going completely sideways. I feel like this time I'm pretty vulnerable. I'm pretty scared, mainly of myself. And so I wanted to give you guys an insight of what exactly is going on, and what's going on in my head, or at least just give you guys a taste of it, because I think it's fair. Oftentimes I go on these spiels, and as much as I say that I've been through a lot of things, I haven't been through it all. I haven't, and even so, every single time I go through something, I still get just as scared as anybody else, because I'm just as human as anybody else. I wanted it to be as helpful as I can to whoever's listening, and I know how helpful it is when somebody reflects and relates to the weak points of everybody's life. And so, to me, it's hard to even know where to start on this whole thing. It really wasn't until I started doing these little podcast episodes that I've been able to actually voice a lot of my feelings. And I mean that for real. I'm not trying to say like I'm a strong and silent person. I'm not. I'm often not very strong at all. A lot of times I'm pretty emotionally unstable, depending on how shit the situation is. Now, that's not to say that I'm weak and I have to be taken care of. I definitely know my duties as head of a household. I know that a vast majority of the time I have to be the strong one in order to maintain our family together. I have to at least seem like I got my shit together. And I know a lot of I'm not gonna say a lot of you men know, even though a lot of fathers and husbands know what I'm talking about. But I would go so far as to say a lot of you parents out there have to know what it is to try and pretend like everything is okay when it's not. And it's really just because, if you put yourself in the same level of breaking down as everybody else, then there is absolutely no chance, of the relationship or the family dynamic moving forward. It's a hard call. And it gets especially difficult when you reach a certain time of festivity, and you have to try and put on a face long enough to be able to somewhat enjoy the exterior celebration of whatever is going on, and then on the inside still know that you still got this shitload of problems going on in your head, and you're trying to keep everybody else stable just as much as you're trying to keep yourself stable, and it turns into a really big mess. And as much as everything is going, as much as there's all this bunch of bullshit going on in your head, your main concern is not letting any of it out, because you know that it's your absolute duty to not not infect anybody else with your stress level. Here's the deal. The company I work for is not really doing much of a Christmas party. Rather, they're taking all the workers and their wives to this bowling place. It's not a bowling place. It has bowling in it, but it's kind of just a big fun rec room. It's just one of these places where it's a good fun time for casual group fun or whatever. So the company's treating us all out to there for a few hours. But the thing is, for the past few days, even though I signed up, I've been very hesitant and I've been debating really, really hard whether or not to go, because despite the fact that I think it would be good for me to have a couple hours of enjoyment and just not having to think about anything around me, like it's good to have some off time, something to distract me even for just a little bit from all the craziness that's going on around me. I also don't want to go for a few particular reasons. One of them being the fact that, there's a few people that I just do not want to run into. Not in this state of mind anyways. And that sounds pretty ironic to hear from somebody like me, because to me, somebody that I don't get along with, or someone that I'm not exactly in best of terms with, is usually not dealt in such a thoughtful manner, and especially not out with me anyways. But I have to be realistic also, because I'm trying really hard to be responsible, and I have to really be aware of what my actions would be in certain situations. It's something that I learned years ago when trying to learn control, really trying to harness energy and learn self-dominance, really analyzing what reactions I take in certain situations. Much like a scientist spends years studying chemicals and learning chemical reactions when coupled with certain what combinations of chemicals have X amount of reactions or whatever, or what happens when you take a substance and throw it in a certain situation, like a certain temperature and in a certain surrounding, and a certain, the list goes on and on. I very much compare it to that. Most people, I don't give them the time of day to get under my skin. If I like you and I'm not happy with you, I'll let you know it. I would like to think I'm pretty good at verbalizing and skillfully, controllably confronting situations and making for a good resolvement. However, if I don't like you, if don't acknowledge you as a person who I am in amnesty with, I will do just that. I will not acknowledge you. I will not recognize you as somebody who's worth my time and energy. And that sounds like a really rude way of, you're just not worth my time. And it's true. It's just the way I approach it. Again, that's probably a really arrogant mindset, but it's kind of my way of avoiding getting myself into an altercation and ultimately a bad situation. And that's just me knowing myself, knowing where the limits of my stability go. So I try to avoid those confrontations, because as much as I am very much an observer of personalities and observe ways to interact with people and try to be smart that way, I also have to be smart with myself. I have to be well aware of what I can and can't handle as far as controlling situations. In a situation like this, in which I fear, and I'm totally going to use this word because I feel it's appropriate, as of right now, I fear I'm scared of what the limits are of my stability as far as dealing with somebody. Plus, you get, drinks and a bunch of, testosterone from a bunch of, construction workers going around and all this stuff. I don't know. I'm trying to be smart. I'm trying to, I'm really debating it because I'm trying to be smart, but at the same time, I could use there's two things outweighing the whole concept of restraining myself, of just not putting myself in that situation, because not putting yourself in that situation is also a big part of being strong, of being smart, of being. I believe that being smart is a big part of being strong. When you're involved in competitive martial arts or competitive combat sports, a big part of it is being smart. When you realize, say for instance, there's a dude who has really good stand-up game, but he knows his upcoming opponent is so well versed on the ground, but who's got really good stand-up, has gotten fairly familiar with jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, has gotten pretty well versed in all this, in pancration and all these grappling oriented manipulations and maneuvers and all this stuff. But then he realizes that he's going up against a well-known jiu-jitsu artist, a black belt, years of experience specialist. All of a sudden that changes up the game a little bit, because no matter how well versed he is, that's just it. He's just fairly well versed. It's not like he's a specialist. He hasn't been doing it since he was 5 or 3 years old. He hasn't been, he hasn't completely immersed himself in it since the very origins of what his martial arts beginnings was. And so that puts him in danger a little bit. Even though he's been prepared for it, he's not as prepared for it. He's not as much as we can say that somebody is fairly well talented in a certain area. Nothing beats the number of years that somebody has been diving into it. Now what I'm getting at is, if the stand-up guy is a smart fighter, he will spend a vast majority of the time preparing for the off chance that he's going to get taken down. And not off chance, it's a fairly likely chance, but he's going to be preparing for that moment so that at the very least he has a chance to, even if not to submit the other guy, but at least to hold his own long enough to get out of the submission holds and all that stuff. And if he's smart, he'll prepare for all of that, but come game time, he'll avoid it. He'll do everything within his power to defend the takedowns, to stay on his feet, to keep the game where he's comfortable at. As prepared as he is for it, he's not gonna to try and outmatch a master at something that he's just recently started dabbling into. Now, a good example of that was the McGregor versus Diaz fight number 2 at 202 at UFC 202. Conor hired 2 jiu-jitsu coaches and prepared vastly for it for months, but he recognized that he could not do Nate, with his 15, 20 years plus of jiu-jitsu experience. So he prepared for whatever the situation was, but realistically, come game time, he did his damnedest to keep the things standing up, and that's all strategic. Absolutely, that's definitely something to be recognized. And so I totally parallel that to this situation with me. I can prep everything. I can say to myself for days, don't get into a confrontation. Mentally prepare myself for being in that situation and this and that should I decide to go. But ultimately, what the smartest thing for me to do is just not go altogether, just because I'm pretty aware that even if I try to avoid it, things are not always going to go as planned. But here's where things get a little bit mentally tricky, because in my own nature, I almost want to throw myself in that situation, knowing what the safest thing to do is. But knowing myself, I don't like taking the safe route, you know? When I said there was two particular reasons, I guess the big one is I kind of want to challenge myself. I want to be able to push the boundaries, push my own limits. I want to put myself in a shitty situation just so I can embrace the situation. Not embrace it in that, you know what, I'm just gonna go in and fucking stir shit up so I can just, get it over and done with. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I want to throw myself in a situation where I'm forced to confront my limits and be able to surpass my own personal capabilities, my own mental boundaries. I want to be able to prove myself wrong on where my limits get. If I think I can't handle a certain situation and keep calm and stable, I want to face that situation and be able and prove myself otherwise. I want, and if I don't think I can do it, I want to go there and force myself to get better at it. Because that's really how it is, If I'm going to compare that to martial arts, well, then there's no better way to, I'm not going to conform myself to not be, for instance, the whole ground game. I'm not going to conform myself to just being a stand-up guy, to just being able to box or do Muay Thai or karate or et cetera, et cetera. You're going to be faced with a situation in which you won't have any choice but to confront it. So rather to be forced or pushed into a situation when you don't know if you're ready for it, why not previous to that, keep throwing yourself in that situation so when it forcefully comes up, completely out of your control, in a situation where you can't walk away from it, then you're ready for it because you've been through it before. And so I almost don't want to walk away from it because I want to make myself better. I want to prove myself that my limitations are farther than what I'm giving myself credit for. And that's something I kind of want to, I want to remain humble with. I don't want to do it for the sake of, I'm far superior than most people. No, fuck that shit. I want to do it for me. I want to prove my own self wrong. I want to prove that I am more stable, that I have gotten better than I have been in the past. Now I know I have, because realistically, I think I would have gotten myself in trouble by now if I was in the same mental state that I was years ago. But I don't know. I guess all in all, the other thing is it's fun to hang around with guys when you're not worried about work, when you're not worried about the stresses of the production, when you're at work and stuff, and it's fun. It's a fun camaraderie. Plus, it's really really fun watching a bunch of people get fucked up when you're the only sober one there. I'm pretty sure a lot of you can relate. It's now the following morning to the Christmas reunion for the company. It went pretty smooth. It was a lot of fun. I got to see a lot of my coworkers. It's always fun to see when you work in the construction industry and you're always in rags, you're always in shitty work clothes and always covered in construction material and all this stuff. It's fun to see what a lot of people look like when they're all cleaned up, when they're not at work, when they dress casually or what have you. It's a lot of fun. You get to see what people somewhat look like in the outside world, and it's a good time, man. It really is a good time, and there's a lot of camaraderie in my line of work. Everybody, most people really do genuinely like each other. We definitely share a bond. I mean, you see each other every day, and you're basically helping each other carry a pretty literal heavy load, because it's pretty labor intensive, and you go through problem solving every day. You learn about different characters, how to interact with certain people at certain times. You find out real quick what to do in certain situations and and what to do with certain personalities, how to deal with them, how to not deal with them. And yeah, I did end up coming across certain figures, certain people, and I did my best to respectfully avoid contact with them. I didn't do any stare downs. I didn't throw any aggressive gestures. I didn't even make any comment like trying to throw heat at them or anything like that. I just kept to myself. I definitely went out of my way to make it clear that I was, in fact, going to not acknowledge them. That part was clear, that they did not have my respect nor my efforts to give them any type of attention. So in that regard, it's whatever. It's all you can really do. But yeah, I'm definitely glad I did what I did. Could that have gone bad? Possibly, but like I was saying earlier, I just wanted to challenge myself to see if I would be able to handle it, to see if I'd be able to put myself in a situation where I think I would know that I shouldn't be doing so. But then again, I'm never going to progress. I'm never going to know how far I've progressed unless I constantly put myself in a challenging spot where I'm kind of forced to either find out if I'm ahead, and if I am not ahead, well then put myself ahead. Yeah, that's whenever you're trying to progress in anything, whether it's it's in art, it's performance, both athletically, artistically, and fundamentally speaking, performance is your ability to perform. And how can you perform if you never put yourself in the situation? You can want to be and I know this is this is really a little far from what this particular episode started up as. You can be a kick-ass, and I'm gonna use music as an example because that's kind of the thing that I've seen the most cases in. You can be the most kick-ass instrument player, and I'm gonna use that term because you'll see what I mean in a little bit. But you will never be a musician if all you're doing is sitting in your room playing your guitar. You can master almost close to the entire book of techniques. You can learn every single note, every single scale. You can learn every single mode. You can learn every single type of beat. You can master every single kind of time signature, every single type of tempo, etc., etc. Whatever element of music there is out there, you can learn it if you sit there in your room and you dwell on it and you internalize it and you master it in your hands, in your mind, and in your ability to do it. But the only way you will become a musician, an interacting musician, if you get out of your room and go put yourself in the position where you're forced to interact with somebody else. You can take two amazing guitar players, have them play the exact same notes to the exact same tempo, and 70 out of 100 times it's not going to line up. It's not going to line up because there's no interaction there. There's no lock there. There's no playing off each other's vibe. And it's only natural if it's the first time because it's never happened before. You don't know what it is to interact, to feed off of somebody else's performance. You will never know what it is to be a musician because so far all you've done is rehearse with yourself. You've never had to fall into what's called the groove, which is basically the to make it real simple, it's the head bop. It's the ongoing feeling, the ongoing internalization of the shared rhythm that you absolutely are forced to connect to, otherwise you're just not going to flow with everybody else. The other thing is, you can be a great band, you can be a great group of individuals, but you will never truly know and you can sit there for hours, rehearse, and record yourselves rehearse, and then listen back to it and keep perfecting it until you sound absolutely spot on to, snap to the grid, tight. Absolutely, you can make yourself sound as tight as possible, but you will never know exactly how tight you are and how on point or how well locked you are until you place yourself in front of a live audience. And it's true, you can be to the tooth precise as a band, and everybody could be very well mastered at their parts and all that stuff, but you will never know exactly how good you guys are as a unit until you place yourself as an audience, when you got adrenaline kicking in, when you got monitorial and sound issues, when you got, a crowd of people making you nervous, looking at you, spectating to see how good you are. You will never know how focused you are as a unit unless there's somebody there letting you know how good or how shit you are. That's what the trial state is. There's something to be said about that, and I'll probably touch on it on a later segment if I get around to it, because I think that's an interesting topic. There's so many branches to that to go into, but it's a matter of, you'll never know how sturdy or how thick your skin is if you're never placing yourself through fire. You'll never know how well you can take something unless you really throw yourself in a position where people are constantly bashing at you and really testing your personality. And just on a side note, I think that's why it's such a good idea, even just for a short term of your life, to go put yourself in an environment that's so man driven, that's so testosteronically infested, because only that's such a really great way to test your personality and character, to see how thick your skin is. My old coworker, the one that I mentioned just a few days ago, about how her character really strengthened through the few months that she spent on the paving crew. It really is a testament to not just to see how far you are in your personality, but also through the course of time, further yourself and really callous yourself in whatever the arts or whatever the personal element happens to be.